I never thought I'd end up standing in front of a pawn shop with a wedding ring in my coat pocket and a crumpled grocery receipt in my hand. But here I was, just off the highway, in a town where the sidewalks crack and the neon signs flicker, like dying fireflies. It was a cold morning. Not winter cold, but the kind of chill that settles in your bones when you haven't slept and there's no milk left in the fridge. I had $27 in my account, and the baby formula was down to one last scoop. The only thing worth anything in my name was that ring. Rose gold, size 6. Tiny diamonds all around the band. Beautiful if you didn't know what it cost me. I looked down at the receipt again. Formula, diapers, Pedialyte. The total was $56.12. I could return the soup and the dish soap, but I'd still be short. And my daughter was already running a low fever. So I stood outside that pawn shop, breathing in air that smelled like oil and burnt coffee from the tire shop across the street, trying to talk myself into letting go of the last piece of my past. It wasn't the ring itself. God knows I didn't care about the marriage anymore. That ended fast and ugly. But something about handing it over felt like a final admission that I'd failed. That everything I used to be, who I was before diapers, double shifts, and night, feeds was really gone. Inside, the light above the door buzzed. The metal gate was half pulled. The sign said open, but it looked more like a warning than an invitation. I tightened my grip on the ring. Just a few minutes. Just one transaction. Then I'd have what I needed for Lily. I took one last breath, pushed open the door and stepped inside. The air smelled like leather and rust. The counter was cluttered with watches, brass trinkets, and dreams that didn't work out. Behind it sat a man in a frayed cap, counting coins like prayers. I didn't say a word at first. Just walked up, placed the ring on the glass, and waited. It was the kind of silence that only happens when something inside you is breaking, and you're the only one who hears it. 3 years ago, I was pitching marketing strategies to venture capitalists in tailored suits. I wore heels that hurt like hell and smiled through 12-hour days with iced coffee and adrenaline. Back then, I was the rising star at a startup called Revision. I had a corner cubicle, a voice in meetings, and a desk plant I kept alive for almost a year, something I was ridiculously proud of. I believed in what we were building, and I believed in Gavin. He wasn't my boss at the time, just the guy who worked late like I did. Smart, sharp, a little too quiet. But when he spoke, people listened, and when he looked at me, it felt like I mattered. It started slow. Drinks after work. Brainstorms that turned into banter. Eventually, the line between professional and personal blurred so completely, we stopped pretending there was one. We moved in together. Shared groceries, bills, and Sunday mornings. We made plans about the company, about our future. And then one day, I was gone. No warning. No long goodbye. Just a resignation letter on his desk and the ring he never gave me, left in a drawer. People thought I left for a better job. Or maybe I cracked under pressure. Only a few knew the truth. And even fewer knew why I had to disappear. I landed in the Bronx 6 months later. Alone. 5 months pregnant. 5 months. Renting a 1-bedroom with a cracked ceiling and a leaky faucet. Took a waitress job under a fake last name. Burned through savings faster than I expected. And then Lily arrived. She was born in late spring. Wide-eyed and quiet. The moment they placed her on my chest, everything else, Gavin, Revision, the life I gave up, fell away. She became the only thing that mattered. But babies don't keep score. They just need what they need. And sometimes love isn't enough to cover rent or fill bottles. So now I work double shifts, sleep in bursts, and budget like it's war. I haven't thought about Gavin in months. Not really. Until today. The man behind the counter picked up the ring with thick fingers, flipped down a loop from his glasses, and held it up under the yellow light like he was inspecting a flea. Low carat, pave band. Not bad, but nothing special. he muttered. I stayed quiet. The way he handled it, like it was just another trinket, made something twist in my chest. He dropped it onto the glass. It landed with a soft clink. I can give you $250. My jaw tensed. That ring was $1,200 retail. He shrugged. Retail's a fairy tale. This is the real world. Metal and stone. You want sentiment? Go to a therapist. It shouldn't have surprised me. I've learned that nothing in this world sells for what it's worth emotionally. Still, I felt like I'd been slapped. I glanced toward the door. Part of me wanted to scoop the ring up, walk out, figure something else out. But I couldn't. Picture Lily waking up hungry again tonight. Couldn't stomach the guilt of mixing formula with more water just to stretch it one more day. I can't do better, he added, already turning his attention to a stack of receipts. Gold prices are trash right now. Take it or leave it. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the ring like it might change its mind. My fingers itched to put it back in my pocket. But there was no plan B. I'd already sold my tablet, my grandma's silver hairbrush, and the watch my dad left me. This was the last thing I hadn't touched. I picked up the pen. Then the bell over the door jingled. The air shifted. Even before I turned around, something in me knew. I felt it in the back of my neck like static before lightning. And when I did, look, I almost dropped the pen. Standing just inside the doorway, in a pressed jacket and expensive shoes that didn't belong anywhere near this place, was the last man on earth I wanted to see. Gavin. And judging by the way his face changed when he saw me, the feeling was mutual. His name wasn't said. It didn't have to be. The air in the shop did something strange when he walked in, like it tightened around my ribs. He looked just as I remembered, only sharper. Polished. Hair shorter, suit darker, but still Gavin underneath it all. The man who used to make me coffee, with oat milk and call it a truce. The man who never asked why I locked the bathroom door for 10 minutes every Tuesday at 3 p.m., just handed me tissues afterward, and now he was staring at me like I was a ghost he wasn't ready to see. Nora? He said, low, careful. I swallowed. My mouth felt dry as chalk. I wasn't ready for this. Not here. Not now. Not with a pawnshop receipt waiting to be signed in front of me. What are you doing here? He asked, stepping closer. I instinctively angled my body, blocking his view of the counter, like I could hide the truth with posture. It's none of your business. His brow furrowed. He looked at the pawnshop guy, then at the form I hadn't signed, then at the ring lying cold between us. It's not what you think. He didn't believe me. Of course he didn't. You're selling your wedding ring? His voice cracked just a little. I didn't even know you were married. I'm not, I said quickly. Not anymore. The pawnshop guy cleared his throat, clearly annoyed by the drama spilling into his territory. Deal or no deal, lady. I got other customers coming in. No deal, Gavin said before I could speak. He stepped forward and picked up the ring, like he had every right to. Like it hadn't been years. Like he still knew me. Put it down, I said, quiet but firm. How much? Gavin asked the man behind the glass. I offered $250. I'll give you $1,000, Gavin said, pulling out a slim leather wallet. Cash. Right now. My heart jumped into my throat. Don't do this. You need the money. That's not the point. Gavin didn't budge. Take it as a trade, not charity. I wanted to scream. I wanted to disappear. Mostly I wanted to not cry in front of him. But then my phone buzzed. One look at the screen and everything else fell away. Mrs. Alvarez. She's burning up, sweetheart, and we're out of Tylenol. Lily. I looked at Gavin. He must have seen the panic hit me, because his expression shifted instantly. Come on, he said. I'll drive you. I don't need... But I did, and we both knew it. The car smelled like leather and eucalyptus, quietly expensive. Gavin drove like he did everything, controlled, smooth, like he already knew the next 5 moves. I stared out the window, gripping my phone so tight I could feel the heat of the battery in my palm. Lily needed fever meds. That was the only thing that mattered. Still, I could feel him watching me from the corner of his eye. "I wasn't expecting to see you there," he said finally. I kept my eyes on the sidewalk blurring past. "Yeah, me neither." "Were you really pawning your wedding ring?" I shifted in my seat. "Let it go." "I just want to understand." "No, you don't." I turned to him, sharp now. "You want a neat answer so you can go back to your big office and feel like you helped your charity case of the day." His jaw twitched, but he didn't rise to it. "You were always the one person who never pulled punches." "Well, maybe. You should have learned to duck." Silence stretched out, thick with everything we didn't say. The hum of the tires over the asphalt filled the space between us. "You could have called me," he said quietly. "I don't need your pity, Gavin." I wasn't offering pity. "Then what were you offering?" I asked, turning to him. "A ride? $1,000 and a pat on the head? You think that fixes anything?" "I didn't come in there to save you." "Then why did you?" He didn't answer right away, just flicked on his turn signal and exhaled through his nose like the words tasted bad. "I was dropping off some camera gear," he said. "My assistant said that pawnshop guy's the only one who doesn't lowball vintage lenses." "How poetic," I muttered. 2 ghosts bumping into each other on the most depressing street in the Bronx. We pulled up to the pharmacy. He parked out front without asking. "You coming in?" I asked, already unbuckling. He looked at me. "You okay?" I hesitated. Then, "I will be." I didn't wait for his reply. Just opened the door and stepped out, boots splashing in a leftover puddle. Some truths could wait. There was a time Gavin and I shared everything but last names. Revision had started in a cramped apartment above a bakery that smelled like cinnamon and burnt coffee. We had 1 desk between us, 2 folding chairs, and more ambition than funding. Gavin coded late into the night, and I designed pitches half asleep on the floor, scribbling marketing plans with whatever pen hadn't run dry. We lived on ramen and almond butter. Our Wi-Fi was terrible. Our dreams were massive. At some point, our fingers brushed too often not to mean something. The company grew, and so did we, into a relationship, into something like love. He'd bring me coffee before big presentations. I'd tuck protein bars into his laptop bag before investor meetings. Then came Series B funding, real money, real pressure. Suddenly we weren't partners in a dream. We were co-founders in a company under scrutiny. The board wanted polish. Investors wanted metrics. Everything became performance. That's when I noticed the discrepancies. Just a few numbers. At first, small things on the expense reports that didn't add up. I brought it up to our CFO at the time, Theo Marlowe, who brushed me off with a tired smile. "It's all above board, Nora," he said. "We just shuffle budgets sometimes to meet growth targets, standard stuff." But it wasn't. And when I pushed harder, I found out things I wasn't supposed to see. I should have gone to Gavin. I should have told him everything. But Theo was sick. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. He had months, maybe. He promised to put the money back before the audit. Said it was temporary. Said he just needed time to sell his property to cover the treatment his insurance wouldn't touch. So I stayed quiet. I thought I could fix it without blowing everything up. Instead, I blew myself out of the company. I left a resignation letter on Gavin's desk the day before the quarterly review. No explanation. No confrontation. Just a line in ink and a return envelope with my shares unsigned. I convinced myself it was mercy. That lie held for 3 years. The pharmacist handed me the paper bag like it weighed nothing. But in my arms, It may as well have been bricks. Infant. Tylenol, a can of powdered formula, diaper cream, $78.23. I stepped outside. Rain again. Always rain when I was broke. Gavin was waiting by his car, umbrella in one hand, the other tucked in the pocket of that ridiculously sleek coat. I hated how put together he looked. I paid the guy, he said before I could ask. The pawn, broker, gave him 1,000. I stopped mid-step. You what? For the ring. It was worth more than that, but I didn't want him flipping it for cash. I stared at him. The umbrella, the calmness, the $1,000 casual rescue. The indignity burned in my throat. You bought my ring? I said. Like you were doing me a favor? I wasn't trying to. You had no right. Nora, you were about to take $250 for it, because that's all I had left to sell. You think that means I want your money? My voice cracked, and I hated that it did. You think I want some clean, guilt-washed gesture from the guy who let me disappear without a word? He looked like I'd slapped him, but I didn't care. Keep the ring, I snapped. Wear it. Melt it down. I don't care. Nora, stop. No, you don't get to show up out of nowhere, throw cash at my worst day, and expect me to smile and say thank you. He lowered the umbrella slightly. I'm not here to fix everything. I just didn't want you to walk out of there with nothing. I laughed bitterly. Newsflash, Gavin. I've been walking out of worse with less. He opened his mouth, then shut it. Smart move. I turned to leave, the plastic bag creasing in my fist. Don't follow me, don't call me. You got your closure, okay? You gotta be the good guy this time. Nora. Goodbye, Gavin. And I walked back into the rain, formula in one hand, pride barely holding me up in the other. I'd barely made it 2 blocks before my phone rang. I almost didn't answer. The screen was half fogged from the rain, my hands shaking from everything, not cold, just adrenaline. But I saw the name flash across the screen. Mrs. Rena. Home. I picked up immediately. Hello? Her voice came through, rushed, worried. Nora, baby, I don't mean to scare you, but Harper's burning up. My breath caught. What do you mean burning? I mean fever, sweetheart. She's flushed, fussy, and the back of her neck is hot like a stove. She hasn't taken her bottle either. I was already turning around. I'm coming right now. Give her a cool cloth. I'll be there in 15. Honey, do you have Tylenol? I just got some. I'll be there. Hung up and stood on the sidewalk, blinking through rain and panic. My feet didn't know which direction to move. Back to the subway, toward a cab I couldn't afford, or just start running like that would make time move faster. Hey, the voice came from behind me. Gavin. Of course he'd followed. Of course. He hadn't listened. I spun around, soaking wet, the pharmacy bag clutched to my chest. Don't, Gavin. I told you. You're shaking, he said calmly. What happened? My daughter has a fever. The words hit the air like a dropped plate. They clattered between us. He took a beat. You have a daughter. I didn't answer. He looked at the bag in my arms, then at me. Let me drive you. No. Nora, don't be stubborn. I don't need you. You don't have time for this. That part shut me up. He pulled out his keys, already heading toward his car. Get in. I hesitated for maybe 2 seconds, maybe 3. Then I followed. The car was too quiet. The kind of quiet where even the windshield wipers sounded like they were trying too hard. Left, right, left, right, beating out a rhythm that didn't match my pulse. I stared out the window, watching the streetlights blur through the rain. My fingers clenched the pharmacy bag tighter than I needed to. My knees were damp from the walk, My pride was still sore from the store, and my daughter, my Harper, was waiting. Sick, small, needing me. That was the only thought I could afford. Gavin drove like he always did, smooth, controlled, one hand on the wheel. Like the world never rattled him, but I saw it in the way he kept glancing sideways, like he was trying to understand something he hadn't expected. "You could have told me," he said finally. I didn't look at him. "Didn't know I owed you updates." "That's not what I meant." "Then maybe don't say anything." Silence. Again. The kind that came when people had too many questions and not enough right to ask them. The car turned sharply down a side street. We were getting closer. My stomach churned. Not from him, not even from the awkwardness, but from the knowledge that I might not have enough left to hold it all together when we got home. "She's okay, right?" he asked. Softer now. "The baby." "Her name is Harper," I said. "And yeah, she will be. If I can get this into her fast enough." He nodded once, jaw tightening. Maybe he thought being quiet made him noble. Maybe he just didn't know what to say to a woman he used to love, now holding cough syrup like a life raft. Outside, the lights of my neighborhood flickered into view. Run-down storefronts, cracked sidewalks. My reality, not his. I finally turned to look at him. "You can drop me off at the corner. I'll take you to the door," he replied. No hesitation. We both knew this drive wasn't over yet. The pharmacy glowed too bright, like a stage I hadn't auditioned for. Everything smelled of antiseptic and vanilla-scented hand sanitizer. Made a beeline for the baby aisle, barely noticing Gavin trailing behind me like a silent shadow. He didn't say a word, just watched. Harper's formula was on the top shelf. Of course it was. I reached up, grabbed one, then paused. Only one. I didn't even bother reaching for the second. Then the medicine. Infant fever reducer. I checked the dosage, the label, the price. $22. Too much. I glanced down at the cash in my coat pocket. Gavin's money. Still folded, still burning a hole through my skin. I didn't want to touch it. So I did what I always did. I pulled out the old grocery store gift card in my wallet and prayed there was something left. At the checkout, I placed the items down slowly, like they might weigh less if I moved gently. The cashier was young, distracted, chewing gum like this was the most boring job on earth. "That'll be $49.83, she said. I swiped the gift card. It beeped. Denied. My face flushed. I pulled out a crumpled 5 and 3 ones, then a quarter, and 2 dimes. "Try this," she raised an eyebrow. "That's not enough." "I just need the formula and the Tylenol," I said, pushing the diaper rash cream aside. The screen updated. Still over. "I can put the formula back. I've got it." Gavin's voice cut in clean, confident, final. He stepped forward, pulling out his card before I could speak. "Add the cream back." "No," I snapped. "You don't need to." "I want to." I said no. The cashier looked between us like she was stuck in a scene she wasn't paid enough to care about. Gavin didn't move. "Let me help." "I don't need help." He looked at me, not pitying, not smug, just steady. "Then let me be part of the solution." I didn't answer. Couldn't. Pride was choking me, but Harper's fever was louder. The beep of the payment approved was the final blow. I stuffed the receipt in my pocket, grabbed the bag, and walked out without a word. Back in the car, the bag crinkled between my knees. I kept my eyes forward, counting the traffic lights, anything to avoid his stare. "You have a child." It wasn't a question. I closed my eyes for a second. The words hung there, heavier than I expected. "Yeah," I finally said. He nodded once. A long pause. How old? 18 months. His grip tightened slightly on the wheel. You didn't think to mention that? I didn't think it was any of your business, I shot back, sharper than I meant. Silence. Again. But you were married? He asked more carefully. Briefly, I said. Didn't stick. He let out a sound, half laugh, half disbelief. Jesus, Nora. What? I didn't picture you. Single? Struggling? Motherhood not glamorous enough. For the version of me you kept in your head? That's not what I meant. Then maybe say what you do mean, Gavin. He exhaled hard. I just didn't know there was a baby. That changes things. I turned toward him. Changes what? He didn't answer right away. His eyes flicked to the bag between us, the pink fever reducer, the tin of formula. It all said more than I ever had. I thought I knew you, he said quietly. Now I'm realizing I didn't know a damn thing. I looked out the window. That makes two of us. The rest of the ride was silent again. But it wasn't the same kind of silence. It was cracked now, with truths too loud to ignore. And outside, the Bronx loomed closer. Home. The farther uptown we drove, the more out of place Gavin looked. Even in silence, I could feel it. The weight of his tailored coat in a world stitched with frayed seams. Straight 2 more blocks, I said, voice low. He glanced around. Rows of old brownstones lined the narrow streets, fire escapes curling like rusted vines. Laundry lines swayed between buildings. My building, with its flickering security light and graffiti-tagged door, stood at the end of the block like it had given up trying to pretend. He parked without a word. You don't have to come up, I told him. Gavin turned off the engine but didn't move. Nora, is it safe here? I scoffed. It's not the Ritz, but it's home. He studied the broken buzzer panel, the cracked tiles. You live here? With a baby? I didn't answer. Didn't owe him that. Instead, I got out. He followed. Of course he did. The stairwell smelled like old takeout and dust. The 3rd-floor landing creaked beneath our feet. I fumbled with the keys, my hands still shaky from everything I hadn't said. Inside, the apartment was clean but worn. Couch from a thrift store. Books stacked like furniture. Toys in a corner. The kind of place built more on necessity than comfort. A faint cry came from the bedroom. Harper. She's up, I said quietly, moving past him. He stayed by the door, eyes scanning the room, absorbing every detail like it was a crime scene. I emerged with Harper in my arms, cheeks flushed, curls stuck to her forehead. Fever still lingering. Gavin stared. Not in pity, just stunned. You never told me, he said. No, I replied. I didn't. And the father? Gone. Doesn't matter. He nodded, but I knew it did matter to him. She's beautiful, he said after a beat. She's everything. He lingered by the door, like unsure whether to leave or offer something he couldn't name. I didn't ask him to stay, and he didn't ask me why I never called. He didn't sit. Just stood there, coat still on, like he wasn't sure if staying too long would break something delicate. From the hallway, Harper's soft babbling drifted out, punctuated by Nora humming some half-forgotten lullaby. I looked around the space. Again, not like before, when I was just surprised. This time I really saw it. The chipped linoleum floor, the single space heater buzzing in the corner. A cupboard left slightly ajar, shelves nearly bare. The stroller by the door, its wheels worn to the plastic. It was survival dressed up as a home. And she'd said nothing. I noticed the coffee table, scattered, with unopened bills, a second-hand baby monitor, and a cracked mug filled with loose change. A handwritten schedule taped to the fridge. Work shifts, pediatric appointments, reminders in all caps to buy formula before Friday. I stepped closer. In the corner, a framed photo sat alone on a shelf. Nora at graduation, younger, sharper, before life got its claws into her. She returned a few minutes later. Harper now asleep against her chest, cheeks pink and slightly damp from fever. Her hair was a mess. She hadn't put on a stitch of makeup. And somehow she looked more real than I remembered. "She's down," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "Won't be long before she's up again." She caught me looking, not judging, just trying to piece together how someone like her, someone who once stood in boardrooms and pitched impossible dreams, ended up here. "You okay?" she asked. I wanted to say something clever or comforting. Instead, all I managed was, "This place, it's not what I expected." She shrugged. "It's enough. Most days. Most days. Not all." And just like that, I realized something I'd never admitted before. I had no idea what she'd carried after she walked away. She disappeared down the hall again, whispering softly to her daughter. The kind of whisper only a mother could master. Half lullaby, half promise. I stayed in the living room, unsure of what to do with myself. The couch creaked as I sat. It sloped slightly to the left, like it had weathered more than just time. Across, from me, a tiny plastic giraffe lay on its side, half buried under a throw blanket. The TV was off, but PBS Kids stickers were slapped on the bottom edge of the screen. I glanced at the wall clock. Tick, tick. The apartment was quiet, but not dead quiet. There was life in the silence. A faucet dripping. The soft whir of the fridge. Wind tapping at the window panes like it, too, wanted in. She returned after a few minutes. Her shoulders were lower now, less stiff. Her hair was pulled back in a messy knot. She looked exhausted, but not broken. "You don't have to stay," she said gently. "I know," I replied. "I just didn't want to leave you like this." "Like what?" I didn't answer, just nodded toward the kitchen. "Want some tea?" She blinked, surprised. "There's only instant." "I've had worse." She busied herself at the counter. I heard the kettle click on, the sound of 2 mugs being pulled from a mismatched cabinet. "This isn't the reunion I imagined," I said eventually. "You imagined one?" "More times than I'd admit." She handed me the mug. "Sorry to disappoint." "You didn't." For a while we just sat there. 2 people who used to know each other better than anyone, now fumbling through the space between strangers and something more. Her fingers curled around the ceramic like it was an anchor. I noticed a faint scar near her knuckle. I never asked how she got it. There were probably 100 little stories I never knew. She finally broke the silence. "You shouldn't have bought the ring. I didn't want it to end up in some glass case under bad lighting." She glanced over. Her eyes were softer now, less guarded. "Then why keep it?" I shrugged. "Maybe I'm just not done with the things it represents." She didn't respond, just looked down at her tea, lost in thoughts I could only guess at. But for the first time all night, she didn't ask me to leave. I let the silence stretch too long, and she noticed. "You're waiting for me to say it," she muttered, half to herself. I didn't push. I just waited. She sat back, drew a long breath, and stared out the tiny window above the sink. Outside, the Bronx streetlights flickered like they were too tired to shine. "Do you remember Jonathan?" I nodded. "Our old CFO, of course. He was dying. That caught me off guard. Pancreatic cancer," she continued. "Stage 4. He kept it quiet. Didn't want pity, didn't want treatment he couldn't afford. Insurance wouldn't cover the one drug that might have bought him time. I set my mug down. Slowly. What does that have to do with you leaving? Nora turned to face me fully. Her expression wasn't sad. It was resolute. He asked me to approve a private transfer. $150,000 just to front the trial. Said he'd sell his house upstate and pay it all back before the next audit. No one would know. I already knew where this was going. And it made my stomach twist. You helped him? I didn't touch the account myself, she said quickly. But I looked the other way. I let the transaction clear. I shielded it with a miscellaneous R&D tag. And then I left. Nora. Because I knew if I stayed, someone would trace it. And you... Her voice cracked for the first time. You would have had to report it. He'd have died behind bars. The kettle hissed softly. Neither of us moved. I put the ring in your office drawer, she added, quieter now. And I sent the letter. I thought it would be clean. Final. I tried to absorb it all, but it felt like trying to hold water in cupped hands. Why didn't you just tell me? Because you're honorable, Gavin. You would have done the right thing, the legal thing, and maybe that would have been justice. But it wouldn't have been kindness. She looked down at her chipped mug. I chose kindness. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. My chest felt tight in a way I hadn't expected. You could have ruined yourself. I kind of did, she said, not bitter, just honest. She stood up to rinse her mug, like the conversation hadn't just split us open. I don't regret it, she added, but I regret not trusting you with it. I stood too. Then maybe it's time you did. She didn't answer. But she didn't turn away either. And that was something. She was drying the mug with a faded dish towel when I finally spoke. You should come back. Her hands froze. She didn't turn around. To revision? Yes. She gave a short, humorless laugh. What would I even do there now? It's been 3 years. You've moved on. The company's moved on. Not really, I replied. You built the foundation, the voice, the vision. Half the team still uses your pitch deck from the Valencia rollout. She finally turned, leaning her hip against the counter. Her expression was a careful mask. You want me back out of guilt. Don't. No, I said firmly. Not guilt. Not charity, not nostalgia. I stepped closer, closing the space between us. Not too close. Just enough to make sure she heard everything. We're launching a new division, I said. Sustainability products. Real innovation. Real reach. But the messaging is a mess. No one on the current team can nail it. And honestly, the only person I know who could tell that story is standing in front of me, holding a dish towel. She blinked. I added, more gently now. You haven't lost your edge, Nora. You were always 10 steps ahead of everyone. Except when it came to protecting my own career, she muttered. I ignored the jab. Come back. On your terms. Title, hours, remote if you want. Bring your daughter to the office. We just opened an on-site childcare center. She looked at me then, really looked. Her eyes were glassy but clear. Gavin, it's not that simple. Maybe not, but it can start simple. She shook her head. People will talk. Then let them. You've got nothing to be ashamed of. You did what you believed in. And I hesitated, letting the moment hang. I never stopped trusting your judgment. Even when you were gone. She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no either. She folded the towel, set it down, and whispered, I need to think. I nodded. Outside, a siren wailed somewhere down the block. In here, the only sound was the quiet click of her turning off the kitchen light. And I knew, whatever she decided, this was the moment things began to shift. I found the envelope taped to my apartment door that morning. No name, no return address, just a cheap manila envelope with my first name scrawled in black ink across the front. Slanted handwriting I didn't recognize. My stomach dropped the moment I saw it. I brought it, inside with one hand while balancing my daughter's diaper bag in the other. She was fussy from the sleepless night, and I didn't want to wake her again. I waited until she was settled in her crib, breathing softly, before I peeled it open. Inside were 3 photographs. The first, me and Gavin in the pharmacy aisle, standing too close. My hand resting on a shelf while he leaned in, concerned. The second, the parking lot outside, his hand on the small of my back as we walked to his car. The third, the 2 of us in the passenger seat, him glancing over at me. My face was soft, tired, vulnerable. It looked more intimate than it was. I sank into the kitchen chair, heart racing. Who took these? I flipped the envelope over again, but there was nothing else, except a short typed note on cheap printer paper. Interesting reunion. I wonder what the press, or your new boss, would think. No name, no signature. Just that. I stared at the words until they blurred. Who would send something like this? Who even knew about that night? There was only one name that came to mind, and I hadn't said it out loud in months. Bryce. I hadn't heard from him since the court finalized the divorce. No child support, no calls, no visits. He disappeared like smoke. And now this? I pulled out my phone with shaky fingers and called Gavin. He answered on the second ring. Hey, everything okay? I got something, I whispered. It's not good. It wasn't even 10 a.m. when the knock came. 3 sharp raps, too confident to be a neighbor, too casual to be anyone official. I glanced through the peephole. My stomach clenched. Bryce. He looked better fed than I remembered. Smug in a leather jacket that definitely didn't come from any thrift store. His eyes scanned the hallway like he owned it. When I opened the door just a crack, he grinned. Missed me? He said. I didn't even know you were alive, I muttered, blocking the doorway with my body. He raised his hands, mock innocent. Can we talk? Unless you want me to shout out here about our daughter and your new sugar daddy? I let him in. I didn't have a choice. He strolled in like it was still his apartment, glancing around like he was judging the place. Still. Cozy, he said, running a finger along the edge of the countertop. So, I see you're back in the game. I crossed my arms. What do you want, Bryce? He smiled, slow and cruel. Half. I blinked. Half of what? Whatever you're about to get from revision, he said. You're working again, right? Reconnected with your golden boy CEO. I'm guessing a cushy salary. Maybe a bonus. Maybe even a piece of the pie. I stared at him. You left. You walked away from Harper. You haven't paid a dime or called once in nearly a year. He shrugged. That doesn't mean I gave up my rights. Rage flared in my chest. You don't get to walk back into our lives and start making demands. I'm not demanding, he said smoothly. I'm negotiating. You have what I want. And I have leverage. I thought of the envelope, the photos. My pulse quickened. That was you. Surveillance is easy these days, he said with a shrug, especially when someone's predictable. You always were, Nora. I stepped toward him. You try to blackmail me again, and I'll file a restraining order so fast? I'm just giving you an option, he interrupted. Either we work this out, or maybe Revision's board finds out you're playing house with the CEO. Optics matter, sweetheart, especially for a company that just went public. He started toward the door, then paused. I'll be in touch. Think about what's best for Harper. She deserves a secure future, and so do you. Then he was gone, The door clicked shut, but the tension stayed, curling around my ribs like wire. I picked up my phone. "Gavin," I said when he answered. "We have a serious problem." I met Bryce at a dingy coffee shop 2 blocks from the apartment. I'd picked the place on purpose. Cheap, loud, public. Less chance of me throwing a ceramic mug at his face. He was already there, sipping something overpriced and smug. His smile widened when he saw me. "You look good, Nora. Must be the CEO glow." I didn't sit. "Say what you came to say." He raised an eyebrow. "No small talk?" Cut the crap. He leaned back in his chair like he had all the time in the world. "I've been thinking. Maybe instead of money, we make things official." I froze. "What do you mean?" "I mean custody. I'm Harper's father. I have rights. If you're back in the corporate world with long hours and stress, maybe it's time I stepped in, took some responsibility." A laugh escaped me, sharp, bitter. "Responsibility? You ghosted her for 11 months. He didn't flinch. "I was figuring things out." "You didn't even know she had a peanut allergy?" He smiled, slow and nasty. "That's what lawyers are for." My hands curled into fists. "You want custody just to get leverage over me." "Don't be dramatic," he said. "This could be good for her. Dual households, different experiences. And I wouldn't mind a monthly support check, considering your new salary." It hit me like a punch to the chest. This wasn't about Harper. It never had been. "This is blackmail," I hissed. "It's legal recourse," he said calmly. "I've already spoken to someone. Judges like stability, financial security. You live in a walk-up with a toddler and no co-parent. That's not a great look." I couldn't believe it. I'd spent every day of Harper's life keeping her safe, fed, warm, alone. He reached into his coat and slid a document across the table. "Preliminary petition. I haven't filed it, yet." I stared at it. His name, Harper's, the words, "Motion to establish custody and visitation rights." My fingers trembled. "You're not taking her," I said, voice low but deadly. "I'll burn every bridge before I let you near her again." He smiled, stood, and patted my shoulder like we were old friends. "Then you better be ready to fight dirty. Because I already am." He walked out, whistling. I sat there, heart pounding, the paper still in front of me. Harper's future had just become a battlefield, and I was done playing fair. I barely made it back to the apartment before the sobs hit. I shut the door, slid down to the floor, and let the panic take over. That's where Gavin found me, sitting in the entryway with my arms wrapped around my knees. He didn't ask what happened. He just knelt beside me and waited until I could breathe again. When I finally looked up, I handed him the custody petition Bryce had shoved at me. He read it in silence. No questions. No interruptions. When he reached the end, he folded it carefully, placed it on the counter, and said 3 words. "We need counsel." I blinked at him. "What?" "A lawyer. A real one. Someone who's seen men like Bryce before. And we need a plan." His tone was measured, calm, but I could see the tension in his jaw, the fury he was holding back. "I don't want Harper dragged through a custody fight. And I don't want you to lose your daughter because of some vindictive parasite who sees her as a paycheck." I stood slowly. He's bluffing. Maybe. But you can't afford to guess. You need to be ahead of this. I looked around the apartment. The peeling paint, the broken radiator, the secondhand crib. This wasn't just my home, it was evidence. To a court, it could look like failure. "What do we even have?" I asked. "Besides my word against his?" "We have your history, his absence, his texts, your pediatrician, your neighbors, your boss. people who can speak to your life. He paused, stepping closer. And you have me. Revision has legal resources you can tap into as an employee. I'll make sure they're available to you. I don't want this to be your problem, Gavin. His voice softened. It became my problem the second I walked into that pawn shop. I swallowed hard. You said you didn't need saving, he added. And I believe you. But you're not alone anymore. Not in this. I looked at him, really looked, and felt something shift inside me. Maybe I didn't have to carry this fight by myself anymore. Maybe, just maybe, this time I had backup. The conference room felt colder than it should have. Or maybe it was just me, sitting across from Gavin and the lawyer he'd called in. Vanessa Cortez, Revision's general counsel, dressed in navy and precision. She didn't smile, didn't offer sympathy. Just opened a manila folder and said, "You're in a vulnerable position, but not a helpless one." That was her way of saying, "We've got work to do." Gavin sat beside me, silent but solid. I could feel the weight of his support without him saying a word. Vanessa continued. "Here's what Bryce is likely to argue, that you're financially unstable, living in inadequate conditions, and that he's stepping up as a responsible father. It's a common angle, manufactured redemption." I nodded. He doesn't care about Harper. He just wants leverage. He doesn't need to care. He just needs a story a judge will consider plausible. Her words hit hard, but they were honest. I preferred that to false hope. "So what's our move?" Gavin asked. Vanessa flipped the folder around and tapped on a document. "We build a record. You're employed now, full-time with benefits. That helps. Gavin's already expedited HR to finalize your onboarding. The child care center files. Check. Pediatric visits. Check. We document everything." I watched her work. Precise. Efficient. A machine built for war in courtrooms. "But we need more," she said. "Character references, statements from your previous employer, neighbors. Any proof Bryce's involvement was non-existent until now." "There's nothing official," I admitted. "He ghosted. No letters, no visits. Just silence." "Silence can speak volumes," she said without missing a beat. I looked over at Gavin. He was staring at the custody petition again, his fingers curled into a loose fist. "Gavin," I said quietly, "you don't have to do all this." He looked up, steady. "I want to," he said. "I should have fought for you 3 years ago. I'm not making that mistake twice." My throat tightened. Vanessa closed her folder. "We'll draft a restraining order request too. Bryce showing up uninvited, threatening custody. Those details matter. Judges care about patterns of intimidation." Outside the window, the skyline glowed orange with late sun. Inside, tension coiled like wire. But for the first time, I wasn't just bracing for the storm. I was preparing to fight. I picked a neutral coffee shop on East 12th, the kind with exposed brick, tiny tables, and enough background noise to keep a conversation private without whispering. Vanessa had insisted it be public. Cameras, witnesses, safety. Bryce arrived 10 minutes late, like he wanted the upper hand. He wore a blazer too expensive for someone with no job and sunglasses he didn't take off indoors. He scanned the cafe and smirked when he saw me. "Look at you," he said, sliding into the seat across from mine. "New job already? Must be nice having the CEO wrapped around your finger again." I didn't flinch. I didn't blink. Just stirred my lukewarm coffee and said, "You win." He blinked. "What?" "You're right. I can't do this alone. You know the law better than I do. You know how this plays. Judges don't care about history. They care about money, space, status." His ego puffed instantly. "So what? Now you're ready to talk numbers?" I nodded. What do you want? He leaned in, sunglasses finally sliding down his nose. 5 million, up front. Or I go public. Custody, PR storm, boardroom chaos. You'll lose everything. I bit my lip, just enough to make it look like I was afraid. And in return, disappear. You keep the kid. Gavin keeps the company. Everyone wins. I let the pause stretch. Then I sighed. Okay. He froze. Okay? One condition, I said, sliding a piece of paper across the table. We write it down. Today. I'll get Gavin's legal team to draft it. You get your money, I get my daughter. He took the paper without reading it, arrogance dripping from every movement. Didn't think you'd fold this quick. Guess motherhood makes you soft. I smiled. Just a little. Guess so. Behind him, 2 customers got up and left. I recognized one of them, our off-duty security guy, wired with a mic. Vanessa's contact. Can I go now? I asked. He waved his hand dismissively. We're done. I stood, grabbed my purse, and left the cafe without looking back. Outside, the air smelled like damp pavement and something colder. Justice, maybe. A block away, Gavin was waiting by his car. Well? He asked. He bought it, I said. Gavin nodded, jaw tight. Good, because tomorrow we burn it all down. The next morning, we met at the law office downtown. Vanessa had secured a private conference room. Gavin was already there, arms folded, watching the city outside with the quiet fury of someone who'd waited too long to strike back. Bryce is due in 10, she said, locking the door behind us. We run it tight, no dramatics, just proof. I nodded, clutching the tiny flash drive in my coat pocket. Last night, after Bryce left the cafe, our guy handed it to me. Clean audio, time-stamped, admissible. Bryce walked in 5 minutes late, just like always. Wearing that same smug look, like he was here to collect a prize he hadn't earned. Morning, he said, tossing his phone on the table like he owned the place. Hope you brought the checkbook. Vanessa smiled too pleasantly. Actually, we brought something better. She clicked a button on her laptop. The speakers crackled. Then, 5 million, or I go public. Custody, PR storm, boardroom chaos. You'll lose everything. Bryce's jaw tensed. I didn't say anything. I just watched. Didn't think you'd fold this quick. Guess motherhood makes you soft. Silence, except for the sound of Bryce's breathing shifting. Faster now, shallower. Vanessa looked up. That's your voice, Mr. Carter. Making an explicit demand in exchange for silence. That's extortion. He stood up. You can't use that. You recorded me without consent. In the New York State, Vanessa cut in. Only one party consent required. That party was her. Gavin tossed another folder on the table. And here are your login records. You accessed our systems last month. Illegally. Bryce stared at the papers, eyes darting. You're bluffing. Vanessa leaned in. No. We're building a case. One that could land you with federal charges and strip you of every visitation right you ever had. He looked at me then. A flicker of desperation. You wouldn't. She's my daughter. I stood. Calm. Clear. No. She's my daughter. And you used her as a pawn. He slumped back into the chair, suddenly smaller. What do you want? Gavin's voice was ice. You walk. You sign over all rights. Today, you disappear. Bryce didn't fight it. Not this time. Vanessa slid the paperwork across the table, and Bryce signed. One line at a time, he gave up the last thread of control he ever had over me. When it was done, he looked up, tried for one last dig. You think this is over? But the truth was already in the room. It had been over the minute I stopped being afraid. The pen scratched faintly as Bryce signed the final page. His signature, the same one that had once sealed our marriage license, now severed every legal tie he had to our daughter. He dropped the pen like it burned him, then sat back, jaw clenched, eyes flicking from Gavin to Vanessa, then finally to me. "So that's it," he said. "Just like that, I'm erased?" "No," I replied calmly, folding the documents. "You erased yourself a long time ago. Today just made it official." Bryce chuckled, low and bitter. "You think this little power move means you've won? Think Lily's safer," I said, rising. "And that's all that matters." He stood too, pushing his chair back with a loud scrape. "Enjoy your little fairy tale. Gavin the knight in shining armor, you the noble single mom. You really think that ends well?" Gavin stepped forward, eyes hard. "If this is you trying to sound threatening, you're failing." Bryce's smirk returned, but it was hollow now. "You've got your company, your girl, your hero moment. But stories don't stay clean, man. Things always leak." He turned. To me, voice dipping low. "People love a good comeback, but they love a scandal more." I didn't flinch. "You already played your cards, and you lost." Vanessa moved to open the door. "We're done here." Bryce didn't move at first. Then slowly, he picked up his phone, shoved it into his pocket, and walked out. Silent, but not defeated. Not completely, not yet. As the door clicked shut behind him, I exhaled for the first time in what felt like minutes. Gavin rested a hand lightly on my back. "You okay?" "I don't know yet," I whispered. "But I think I will be." Vanessa nodded, already gathering her notes. "He's desperate. Desperate people sometimes double back. We'll tighten security. Keep the legal motion sealed for now. No press." I nodded. Bryce might have walked out of the room, but his shadow still lingered. But so did something else. Relief. Clarity. And the smallest flicker of peace I hadn't felt in years. The glass doors of revision slid open with a soft whoosh, and, for a second, I stood motionless, my reflection looking back at me. Tailored blazer, clean lines, a real bag instead of a fraying tote. My daughter's small hand clutching mine. "Come on, sweetheart," I said softly. Lily trotted beside me, her pink sneakers lighting up with every step. The security desk greeted me by name. A badge waited for me, laminated and crisp. Nora Callahan, Director of Brand Strategy. The elevator ride to the 15th floor was silent, except for Lily humming some tune she'd picked up from a cartoon. I held her hand tightly. Not out of fear, just to remind myself this was real. The doors opened to a redesigned office space I barely recognized. Sleek desks, living walls of greenery, and that same buzzing ambition I remembered from years ago. A few heads turned as I stepped out, some faces familiar, some not. Most curious. "She's really back," I heard someone whisper, just before the door to the marketing wing opened. A woman in a navy dress smiled at me. "Miss Callahan? I'm Erin from HR. Welcome back. Childcare drop-off is just down the hall." Lily hesitated at the door to the playroom, eyes wide. I knelt, brushing hair from her forehead. "Mommy's just a few doors down, okay? You'll be brave?" She nodded, small and determined, then threw her arms around me. That hug cracked something in me, not from pain, but from weight. The weight I'd carried for years was lifting. When I entered the marketing floor, a hush fell over the room. Then polite nods, a few cautious smiles. I walked straight toward my new office, glass walls, city view, and a small ceramic giraffe, waiting on the desk. Lily's favorite toy, apparently hand-delivered by Gavin earlier that morning. I set down my bag, adjusted the blinds, and looked out over the skyline. Somewhere out there, the version of me who left this place years ago was watching, but she wasn't angry. She was proud. I'd barely sat down at my new desk when the knock came. Hey, it was Marcus. Same crisp shirt sleeves, same clipped tone. We'd worked side by side for almost 5 years, until I vanished. You're really back, he said, standing at the threshold, like I might disappear again if he blinked. I nodded. Looks like it. His eyes flicked to the framed photo of Lily on my desk, then back to me. A lot's changed. I can see that. There was a beat too long of silence. Then he gave a tight smile. Well, welcome back. He turned and walked away before I could say more. By lunch, I'd already felt it. The lingering looks in the kitchen, the pauses in conversations when I entered the room, the ones who remembered, and the ones who'd only heard the version of the story that circulated after I left. Wasn't she the one who ghosted during the audit? She dipped right before the CFO scandal broke, right? I heard she cashed out and vanished. They didn't say it to my face, but I could feel every syllable resting in the air between us like smoke. I sat in on my first team meeting that afternoon. I'd read every briefing packet, prepped every stat. But none of that prepared me for the way Alicia, now a senior strategist, stiffened when I started talking. Or how a younger associate, whom I didn't even know, rolled her eyes when I introduced a new brand angle. I got it. I did. From their view, I'd walked away when things got tough, left them to pick up the pieces. My return probably looked like some backroom favor from the CEO, but they didn't know the whole story, and I wasn't going to defend myself on day one. I kept my voice steady, my ideas clear. By the time the meeting ended, at least one skeptical eyebrow had softened. Back in my office, I stared at the city outside and whispered to myself, earn it. Again. No shortcuts, no justifications. Just work. The only way out was through. It was at the Thursday all-hands meeting that everything came to a head. The glass conference room buzzed with low conversation as employees trickled in. I sat near the end of the table, taking notes quietly, pretending not to notice how many eyes flicked toward me and then quickly away. Then Gavin walked in. He didn't sit at the head of the table like he usually did. Instead, he stood beside the screen, one hand in his pocket, gaze sweeping the room with calm command. Before we begin, he said, I want to address something that I know many of you have been whispering about since Monday. I felt every muscle in my back go stiff. He looked directly at me for a moment, not unkindly, then turned back to the room. There have been questions about Nora's return, about why she left Revision 3 years ago and why she's back now. The room went still. I'm going to clear that up right now, Gavin said. He paused, then continued, slower this time. Nora was never fired. She wasn't asked to leave. She chose to walk away, at a time when staying would have meant betraying someone she respected. She gave up her role, her salary, her equity, and her future here out of principle, something most of us would struggle to do. I looked down at the table, throat tightening. Gavin wasn't done. When the board discovered inconsistencies in the company's finances back then, they launched a full investigation. Nora refused to speak out against someone she believed in, someone who, yes, turned out to be in the wrong, but she didn't protect them for gain. She protected them out of loyalty. And when she realized staying would bring scandal and questions, she left. Silently, without pointing fingers. His voice dropped, almost reverent. That was not weakness. That was integrity. He stepped back. So if anyone's wondering why she's here now, the answer is simple. Because I asked her. Because she's still the best mind in this company for brand strategy, and because Revision would not be what it is today without her fingerprints all over its foundation. Silence. Then, slowly someone clapped, and then another. I didn't look up, not right away. I just stared at my notes, at the half-drawn sketch of a brand arc I'd been working on before he started talking. But something inside me loosened, and I knew, In that moment, I wasn't walking in the shadow of my past anymore. I was finally stepping out of it. Later that afternoon, I found an envelope on my desk. No name, no note, just my name typed cleanly across the front. Inside, a navy blue USB drive, sleek, branded with the Revision logo. I frowned. Before I could plug it in, Gavin's voice came from the doorway. I figured you might open that alone. Stepped into the office, leaving the glass door cracked behind him. What is this? I asked, holding the drive between my fingers. It's not what you think, he said. Or maybe it is. I plugged it into my laptop. A single folder popped up. Carter Equity Agreement. Final PDF. I stared at it for a long moment, heart suddenly thudding. I thought my equity was void, I said. I signed the forfeiture when I left. You signed it, Gavin said, but I never filed it. I turned to him slowly. You... what? I kept it in my desk, he said, voice quiet. Locked up. For 3 years. I don't know. I guess part of me hoped you'd come back. Or maybe I just couldn't accept that someone who helped build this company from a coffee-stained couch in a Brooklyn apartment would walk away with nothing. The words hit harder than I expected. You own 4% of Revision, he continued. Always have. The valuation's changed a bit since. You left, obviously. I swallowed. 4%? He nodded. That's... I tried to calculate in my head, but the number was too big, too unreal. That's millions. 22, last I checked. Before taxes. I leaned back in my chair, the room tilting, slightly. Why now? Why tell me this today? Gavin didn't answer right away. He sat across from me, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. Because I meant what I said this morning. You didn't lose your place here. You stepped away. That... Equity isn't charity, Nora. It's yours. You earned it before the world knew my name. I looked at the file still open on my screen, then back at him. Does the board know? They do now, he said. Vanessa handled the disclosure. I exhaled. Not just from my lungs, but from somewhere deeper. All this time, I thought I'd lost everything. My job, my future, my worth. But some part of it, some part of me, had quietly survived, kept safe, waiting to return. The room was filled with cameras, warm lights, and quiet tension. Journalists scribbled notes, PR assistants hovered near the back, and in the front row sat investors with smiles too practiced to be real. This wasn't my first product launch. But it was the first one where I was the name behind the screen, behind the mic. My name, Nora Carter, was printed neatly on the placard in front of me, right next to the words, Creative Director, Revision Labs. Not assistant. Not contractor. Not X. I took a slow breath as the host cleared her throat. Next up, we'd like to introduce the creative lead behind Revision's most ambitious product yet. Please welcome back, Nora Carter. Applause. Polite but warm. I stepped up to the podium, notes in hand. But I didn't need them. I looked at the crowd, then into the cameras. I thought of the version of me who'd once stood in a pawn shop, clutching a wedding ring, begging the world not to see how low she'd fallen. And now here I was, backlit by LED displays, backed by a team of engineers and designers who'd believed in what I had to say. When we began this project, I said, we weren't chasing a trend. We were answering a need. And sometimes, the most important innovations come not from tech labs or boardrooms, but from the real world. From the people juggling babies and bills, who don't need another app. They need their time back. A few heads nodded. I kept going, voice steady. This isn't about gadgets. It's about dignity, and giving people the tools to own their time, their stories, their future. As I wrapped up, I caught Gavin's eyes across the room. He was in the back, leaning against the wall, hands in pockets. Just watching. Proud, but quiet. This wasn't about him anymore. He knew that. I think he liked it that way. I stepped down from the stage to a flurry of questions and flashes. My old world, buzzing with relevance and demand, had found me again. Or maybe I had found it. A younger intern slipped me a bottle of water. "You crushed that," she whispered. I smiled. "Thanks." Outside, the sky was bruised with dusk. My phone buzzed with messages, press requests, congrats, calendar updates. I answered none of them. Instead, I stepped to the window, looked out at the skyline, and reminded myself I wasn't someone's ex. I wasn't a pity hire. I wasn't just a mom doing her best. I was Nora Carter, and I was back. The conference room had emptied. The buzz of the launch still echoed faintly through the halls, but most people had moved on. To drinks, to emails, to celebrations I wasn't quite ready for. I stayed behind, staring out the window, sipping cold coffee I'd left untouched during the press conference. The door opened behind me. I didn't have to turn. "I thought you slipped out," I said softly. "I waited," Gavin replied. His voice was quieter than usual, more personal. Didn't want to make it about me. I nodded, still facing the skyline. "You didn't." A long pause, then from behind me, "Nora, what about us?" I turned slowly. He wasn't leaning or smirking or calculating a perfect moment. He looked honest, stripped of the CEO polish. Just a man, asking a woman a question neither of them had dared speak aloud. My heart caught. "We've been through a lot," I said. "You helped me. You fought for me. I'll never forget that." "That's not what I'm asking." I knew, but I wasn't ready to answer. Not yet. "I don't know, Gavin," I said, voice steady. "I've spent the past 3 years surviving. Now for the first time I'm becoming someone new. Or maybe someone I always was, but never had space to be." He nodded, slowly. "I don't want to get in the way of that." "You're not," I said quickly, then softer. "But I need to find out what I want without owing it to anyone. Even you." He didn't flinch. Didn't try to convince me, just stepped back. "I can live with that," he said. "As long as you know. I'll be around, if and when." I smiled then. Gentle. Grateful. Real. "I know." And with that, we let the silence say the rest. The elevator doors opened to the main lobby of Revision, now filled with guests, media banners, and glass displays glowing with the company's latest launch. I walked toward the exit alone, my heels clicking against the polished floors. The applause from earlier still echoed in my ears. I had stood on that stage. I had spoken not just as a returnee, but as someone leading the creative vision for the company's boldest leap yet. I wasn't the woman who once walked out, broken and blamed. I was someone else now. Through the crowd, a flash of pink caught my eye. There she was, my daughter, Kennedy, waving wildly from the side of the room, her little hand sticking out from behind the childcare coordinator's legs. Her curls bounced with every movement. I laughed. The sound came out surprised and full, like something I hadn't heard in myself for years. I crossed the room quickly, crouching to meet her. "Mommy, you were on TV," she chirped, eyes wide with wonder. "You talked like a princess." I kissed her forehead, holding her close. "Did I?" She nodded solemnly. "But cooler, like a space captain." That made me laugh again. The childcare staff handed me her small backpack. then hesitated. "Oh, and someone dropped this off earlier. Said it belonged to you." A small velvet box. My heart stopped. I opened it. Inside was the wedding ring I'd tried to pawn months ago, gleaming, untouched, resting quietly like a chapter I'd thought was over. There was no note, no grand gesture, just the ring. Returned. Held it for a moment, not with longing, not with sadness, just awareness. This ring didn't belong to a past version of me anymore. It wasn't a symbol of failure or desperation. It was a reminder of how far I'd come. I slipped it into my pocket, then stood up, took Kennedy's hand, and walked out into the afternoon light. We didn't need symbols to tell our story. We were living it together. Sometimes I still remember. The rain, the kind that soaks through your coat before you realize you're wet. That morning outside the pawn shop, I'd stood there, fingers frozen around the wedding ring I was ready to trade for a can of formula and a bottle of infant Tylenol. I hadn't cried then. I was too empty to cry. Just cold. Just tired. I didn't know that inside that shop, I'd see Gavin again. I didn't know how much would change in the weeks that followed. All I knew was that the ring in my hand didn't mean love anymore. It meant desperation. Now it sits quietly in a wooden box on my bedroom shelf, not on a pedestal, not locked away in shame. Just there. I took it out tonight. Kennedy was asleep, curled up like a question mark in her bed. The apartment was quiet, warm, lived in, full of small fingerprints on walls and mismatched mugs in the sink. My name was back on the lease. My email inbox had a waiting list of clients. My heart, for once, didn't ache. I held the ring in my palm, turning it slowly. Gold, unbent. The stone still intact, though smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I'd just outgrown it. This ring had traveled with me through a marriage, a breakdown, a custody battle, and a rebirth. It was never the villain. It just belonged to a version of me who had needed to let go. I didn't throw it away. I didn't wear it either. I placed it gently back into the box, shut the lid, and slid it into the drawer. Not as a keepsake, as a marker of where I'd been and how far I'd walked since. Outside, the rain tapped lightly against the window. Soft, familiar. But it didn't chill me anymore. This time, I was dry, inside and out. This time, I wasn't surviving. I was living. I used to think the lowest point of my life was standing in the rain outside a pawn shop, gripping a wedding ring like it was the last piece of my dignity. But that wasn't rock bottom. Rock bottom was quieter. It was sitting on a bathroom floor at 2:13 a.m. with a screaming baby, an empty fridge, and a phone I was too afraid to check because I owed everyone something. Rent, answers, apologies. It was realizing no one was coming. Not my ex. Not my past self. Not even the version of me I pretended to be. There's something no one tells you about survival. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes, it's a series of tiny humiliations. A grocery receipt you can't afford. A doctor's appointment you cancel. A birthday you forget because you're working 3 jobs and still not making it. I didn't learn resilience from books or mentors. I learned it from sitting with the discomfort of being underestimated, from people whispering that I was irresponsible, unstable, difficult, from watching rooms fill with opportunities I wasn't invited to because I had a stroller, not a strategy, and yet I kept going. That's not a triumph. That's just what people do when they don't have the luxury of breaking. So what changed? Not everything. My apartment's still small. I still budget carefully. I still flinch a little when the doorbell rings unexpectedly. But something inside me shifted the day I stopped apologizing for where I'd been. That's what this whole story has been about. Not love, not money, not redemption. It's been about reclaiming the narrative, about remembering that being broken down by circumstance doesn't mean you're broken as a person. For a long time, I let guilt steer the wheel. I thought I didn't deserve a second chance because I'd walked away, because I'd chosen to protect someone who didn't deserve protecting, because I'd kept secrets that burned me. But healing isn't a clean process. It's messy, non-linear, quiet. Sometimes the healing shows up in the form of a job offer, sometimes in a lawyer who believes you, and sometimes in a small girl's laugh echoing through a hallway you never thought you'd walk again. To be clear, I didn't win everything. My ex still walks the earth. He may never change. There are still people at Revision who doubt me. The world hasn't suddenly become fair. But I stopped waiting for fairness. Instead, I started betting on truth, on action, on my capacity to rebuild. And here's the part I didn't expect. I'm not angry anymore, not at Gavin, not at Bryce, not at myself. Anger burns fast, but what lasts is clarity. And clarity is a quiet kind of power. If you're still listening, maybe you're here because you recognize some piece of yourself in this story. Maybe you've stood in a metaphorical pawn shop, trying to sell off what you once swore you'd never part with. Maybe you've been dismissed, silenced, stretched so thin you started to disappear in your own life. I'm not going to tell you it gets easier, but I will say this. You're not broken. You're not late. You're not less. And your worth is not defined by how low you've fallen, or how quietly you suffered, or how long it's taken you to get back up. Your worth is intrinsic. No title, no relationship, no paycheck, just you. That's the lesson the ring never taught me. But life did. What I'd tell my daughter. Someday, Kennedy will ask me why I left everything, why I sold the ring, why I stayed away from the company I helped build, and I'll tell her, I left because I had to protect what mattered more than pride. I sold the ring because we needed to eat. And I stayed away because sometimes the hardest thing isn't walking out. It's knowing when you're ready to walk back in. She may not understand that right away. But I hope, when life tests her, and it will, that she remembers her mom once rebuilt her whole world from one broken moment. Not perfectly, not quickly, but completely. So where am I now? Still working, still mothering, still growing. I don't know where Gavin and I will end up. Maybe we'll find our way back to each other. Maybe we won't. What I do know is, I don't need a ring to prove anything anymore. Not to the world. Not to a man. Not to myself. That ring now rests in a drawer, not as a symbol of what I lost, but as a witness to what I survived. And honestly, that's worth more than gold.